Deep inside the Iranian desert lies Natanz, a facility buried beneath thick concrete and guarded around the clock. Its purpose was terrifying, producing enriched uranium for a nuclear bomb. For years, world powers watched helplessly as Iran pushed forward with its atomic ambitions. But what if there was another way? A weapon that could strike without soldiers or bombs? This is the story of America's most sophisticated digital weapon and the mysterious man who carried it into Iran's most protected facility. To understand this operation, we must first travel back to the early 2000s when Iran began accelerating its nuclear program at an alarming pace. The country had been quietly working on atomic technology for decades, but everything changed when an Iranian opposition group revealed the existence of secret facilities in 2002. Satellite images confirmed what intelligence agencies feared. Iran was building massive underground complexes designed to enrich uranium far beyond what any civilian energy program would require. The Natanz facility became the crown jewel of Iran's nuclear ambitions. Engineers constructed it deep underground, protected by walls nearly 8 meters thick. Above ground, anti-aircraft batteries stood ready to defend against any aerial assault. Inside, thousands of centrifuges spun continuously, slowly transforming raw uranium into something far more dangerous. These machines work by rotating at incredibly high speeds, separating heavier uranium atoms from lighter ones through centrifugal force. Run enough uranium through enough centrifuges for long enough, and you eventually get weapons-grade material. Washington watched these developments with growing concern. A nuclear-armed Iran would fundamentally reshape the balance of power in the Middle East. Every neighboring country would feel compelled to pursue their own atomic weapons, transforming an already unstable region into a nuclear powder keg. Israel, America's closest ally in the region, and Iran's sworn enemy, faced an even more immediate threat. Iranian leaders had repeatedly called for Israel's destruction, and a nuclear weapon in Tehran's hands could make that nightmare a reality. Diplomatic efforts went nowhere. International sanctions caused economic pain, but failed to slow the centrifuges. By 2007, Iran had installed thousands of these spinning machines and was producing enriched uranium at an increasing rate. Intelligence analysts estimated that without intervention, Iran could have enough material for a bomb within just a few years. President George W. Bush faced an impossible choice: launch military strikes that could trigger a regional war, or watch helplessly as one of America's greatest adversaries acquired the ultimate weapon. Within the shadowy corridors of the National Security Agency, a different kind of solution was taking shape. General Keith Alexander, who led the NSA during this period, had long believed that computer networks represented the next battlefield of international conflict. His teams had spent years developing offensive capabilities, learning how to penetrate enemy systems and manipulate them from the inside. The Iranian nuclear program presented the perfect opportunity to test these theories on the grandest possible scale. The plan that emerged was breathtaking in its ambition. Rather than dropping bombs on Natanz, American programmers would create a piece of software capable of destroying the facility from within. This malware would need to infiltrate Iranian computers, remain hidden while gathering intelligence, and then strike at precisely the right moment to cause maximum damage. The target: those thousands of centrifuges spinning away underground. President George W. Bush approved the operation in 2006, giving it the codename Olympic Games. The project brought together some of the most brilliant minds in American intelligence, along with their counterparts from Israel's elite unit 8,200. Together, these teams built something the world had never seen before: a true cyber weapon capable of causing physical destruction to industrial equipment. The development cost estimates range from $1 to $2 billion, making it one of the most expensive software projects in history. The resulting malware, later named Stuxnet by researchers who discovered it, was a masterpiece of digital engineering. It exploited 4 previously unknown vulnerabilities in Microsoft Windows, each one worth millions on the underground market. These so-called zero-day exploits allowed the worm to spread silently from computer to computer, seeking its target while remaining invisible to antivirus programs and security analysts. But Stuxnet's true genius lay in what happened once it found its target. The malware was designed to infect the specific Siemens software systems that controlled Iran's centrifuges. Once inside, it would subtly alter the commands being sent to the machines. The centrifuges would begin spinning slightly too fast, then slightly too slow, creating tiny vibrations that accumulated over time. Meanwhile, the monitoring systems would show operators that everything was functioning normally. The machines would destroy themselves while their operators watched screens telling them nothing was wrong. To test this weapon before deployment, American engineers needed to understand exactly how Iranian centrifuges operated. They acquired similar machines that Libya had surrendered after abandoning its own nuclear program in 2003. At secret facilities in the United States, engineers built a working replica of the Natanz enrichment halls. When they unleashed Stuxnet on these test centrifuges, the results exceeded expectations. The machines tore themselves apart while computers reported perfect operation. Despite having the most sophisticated cyber weapon ever created, American planners faced one enormous obstacle. The Natanz facility operated what security experts call an air gap, meaning its internal computer network had absolutely no connection to the outside internet. You could not hack into Natanz from Washington or Tel Aviv because there was literally no digital pathway between those locations and the Iranian facility. The computers controlling the centrifuges existed in complete isolation, surrounded by miles of desert and layers of armed security. This meant that Stuxnet could not simply be uploaded remotely like a typical computer virus. Someone would need to physically carry the malware inside the facility and install it on the internal network. The NSA had many talented hackers and programmers, but what they lacked was a secret agent capable of walking into one of the most heavily guarded facilities on Earth. For this critical piece of the puzzle, they turned to an unlikely ally, the intelligence services of the Netherlands. The Dutch General Intelligence and Security Service, known by its initials AIVD, had something the Americans desperately needed: access to Iran. Through years of patient intelligence work, Dutch agents had developed networks and cover operations that could get people in and out of the Islamic Republic. When American and Israeli officials approached their Dutch counterparts with a request for assistance, the Netherlands agreed to help sabotage Iran's nuclear ambitions. The AIVD had already been cultivating a particularly valuable asset for several years. This man had the perfect combination of skills and circumstances that intelligence agencies dream about: technical expertise, legitimate business reasons to visit Iran, and personal connections to the country. His name was Erik Van Sabben, and he was about to become one of the most important spies in modern history. Erik Van Sabben was a Dutch engineer who found work with a heavy transport company based in Dubai. This company had a controversial sideline. It regularly shipped equipment to Iran that international sanctions were supposed to prevent from reaching the country. Van Sabben made frequent trips to Iran as part of this work, becoming familiar with the country's industrial landscape and the people who operated it. His personal life also connected him to Iran in ways that proved invaluable for intelligence purposes. Van Sabben had married an Iranian woman named Alanoush, giving him family ties to the country and natural reasons to visit beyond his professional duties. He spoke with locals, understood the culture, and could move through Iranian society without raising suspicion. For Dutch intelligence, he represented a golden opportunity. The AIVD recruited Van Sabben around 2005, initially using him to gather information about the smuggling networks that supplied Iran with restricted technology. He became a mole inside his own company, reporting back to Dutch handlers about shipments, contacts, and the inner workings of Iran's procurement operations. This work proved so valuable that when American and Israeli agencies came looking for someone who could penetrate Natanz, Van Sabben's name rose to the top of the list. According to a 2-year investigation by the Dutch newspaper De Volkskrant, Van Sabben received his most important assignment in late 2007. He was to travel to Iran, gain access to the Natanz facility, and install equipment that carried the first version of Stuxnet. The cover story was perfect. He would be delivering water pumps, sophisticated industrial equipment that the nuclear facility genuinely needed and that his company specialized in supplying. The full scope of what Van Sabben was doing remains somewhat unclear even today. Dutch intelligence officials later claimed they did not know their agent was carrying American cyber weapons. They believed they were participating in a sabotage operation, but did not understand the revolutionary nature of what Stuxnet would accomplish. Some investigators believe the Americans deliberately kept their allies in the dark about the true payload, using the Dutch spy as an unwitting delivery mechanism for the most powerful digital weapon ever created. Sometime in late 2007 or early 2008, Erik Van Sabben entered the Natanz nuclear complex. He carried equipment that appeared to be standard industrial hardware, the kind of water pumps that any sophisticated facility would require. What Iranian security personnel could not detect was the malicious code hidden within the control systems of these pumps. Once connected to the facility's internal network, this code began silently spreading through Natanz's computers. The first version of Stuxnet worked slowly and carefully. It mapped the facility's systems, identified the computers controlling centrifuge operations, and began its subtle sabotage. Rather than causing obvious failures that would alert engineers to an attack, the malware introduced tiny variations in how the centrifuges operated. Valves would close at slightly wrong moments, creating pressure buildups. Rotation speeds would fluctuate imperceptibly, inducing vibrations that weakened crucial components over time. Iranian engineers noticed that their centrifuges were failing at unusually high rates, but they could not determine why. The computer systems showed normal operations. Equipment met all specifications. Yet machines that should have lasted years were breaking down after months. Engineers were blamed and fired. New equipment was ordered. The problems continued. Iran's nuclear program, which had been racing forward, began to stumble. In January 2009, Van Sabben returned to Iran for what appeared to be a family visit to celebrate the new year with his wife's relatives. During this trip, something changed. According to witnesses who later spoke to investigators, Van Sabben became extremely nervous and fearful. He cut short his visit and rushed to leave the country, behaving as though someone was pursuing him. This sudden panic was unusual for a man who had spent years operating in dangerous situations. We may never know exactly what happened during those days in Iran. Perhaps Van Sabben discovered the true nature of what he had installed. Perhaps he learned that Iranian security was closing in. Perhaps he simply realized the enormous danger he had placed himself in by penetrating one of the most sensitive facilities in the country. Whatever the cause, his career as a spy had reached its end. 2 weeks after his hasty departure from Iran, on January 16, 2009, Erik Van Sabben was riding his motorcycle through Sharjah, near Dubai, when he lost control of the vehicle. The crash broke his neck, and the Dutch engineer died at the scene. He was 36 years old, survived by his Iranian wife and 2 children from a previous marriage. Investigators found no evidence of foul play. The motorcycle showed no signs of tampering. First responders saw nothing suspicious. By all appearances, it was simply a tragic accident. Yet one anonymous Dutch intelligence official, speaking to journalists years later, offered a haunting assessment of Van Sabben's fate. The spy, he said, had paid a high price for his service. Meanwhile, Operation Olympic Games continued without him. When President Bush left office in January 2009, he urged incoming President Barack Obama to maintain the cyber campaign against Iran. Obama agreed and actually accelerated the program, authorizing more aggressive versions of Stuxnet to be deployed. These later variants spread more rapidly and caused more dramatic damage, eventually destroying roughly 1,000 centrifuges at Natanz. The operation might have remained secret indefinitely if not for a programming error. In 2010, one of the newer Stuxnet variants escaped from the Natanz facility, apparently carried out on a laptop belonging to an engineer who later connected to the internet. The worm, designed to spread only within the closed network of the nuclear facility, suddenly found itself loose on the global internet. Security researchers around the world discovered it and began analyzing its code. What they found stunned the cybersecurity community. This was clearly a weapon built by a nation-state with virtually unlimited resources. Its sophistication exceeded anything previously documented. When analysts finally understood that Stuxnet was designed to destroy Iranian centrifuges, the identity of its creators became obvious even without official acknowledgement. Only the United States and Israel had the motivation, resources, and capabilities to build such a weapon. The true identity of the man who delivered Stuxnet to Natanz remained hidden for more than a decade. Researchers speculated about USB drives carried by unsuspecting workers, never imagining that Dutch intelligence had recruited an engineer to physically install infected equipment inside the facility. Only in 2024, after a 2-year investigation by Dutch journalists who interviewed dozens of intelligence officials from multiple countries, did Erik Van Sabben's story finally come to light. Experts continue to debate how successful Operation Olympic Games truly was. The attack destroyed roughly 1,000 centrifuges and may have delayed Iran's nuclear program by 1 to 2 years. Yet Iran eventually recovered, replaced the damaged equipment, and continued enriching uranium. Some argue the operation bought valuable time for diplomatic efforts that led to the 2015 nuclear agreement. Others contend it actually strengthened Iranian resolve to pursue nuclear capabilities. What remains beyond dispute is Stuxnet's revolutionary significance. It demonstrated that digital weapons could cause real physical destruction to critical infrastructure. It proved that air-gapped systems, long considered impenetrable, could be breached through human agents. It showed that cyber operations offered nations a new way to attack enemies without triggering the escalation that conventional military strikes would cause. Security experts call Stuxnet the first true cyber weapon, the opening shot in a new era of digital conflict that continues to this day. Behind this technological revolution stands the memory of one man. Erik Van Sabben walked into a fortress that the world's most powerful militaries could not have bombed without starting a war. He carried equipment that appeared harmless, but contained the most sophisticated malware ever created. His mission changed how nations think about conflict, security, and the invisible battles being waged through computer networks around the world. Whether his death was truly an accident or something more sinister may never be known. What we do know is that his actions helped define a new kind of warfare, one fought through code instead of bullets, through infiltration instead of invasion, through secrets that took more than 15 years to finally reveal. The age of cyber warfare had begun, and its first major battle was fought in the underground halls of a desert facility called Natanz. The secret weapon that America unleashed against Iran opened a door that could never be closed again. By proving that computer code could destroy physical machinery, Stuxnet taught every nation on Earth a profound lesson. The digital realm was now a battlefield where wars could be won and lost. And Iran, the target of this unprecedented attack, learned that lesson better than anyone. Within months of discovering what had happened to their centrifuges, Iranian leaders made a critical decision. They would build their own cyber army. The country that had just been humiliated by invisible lines of code would transform itself into a digital power capable of striking back at its enemies. Tehran poured resources into creating specialized units within the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, training thousands of programmers and hackers in the dark arts of cyber warfare. The results came faster than anyone expected. In September 2012, just 2 years after Stuxnet became public knowledge, American banks began experiencing something strange. Customers tried to access their accounts online and found the websites completely frozen. JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Citigroup, and Wells Fargo all suffered waves of attacks that knocked their services offline for hours at a time. Over 176 days, Iranian hackers targeted 46 major financial institutions, leaving hundreds of thousands of Americans unable to access their money. Intelligence agencies called this Operation Ababil, and they knew exactly what it meant. Iran was striking back. The bank attacks were just the beginning. In 2012, Saudi Arabia's state oil company Aramco, the largest energy corporation on the planet, suddenly found itself under assault. A piece of malware called Shamoon spread through the company's systems, wiping clean more than 30,000 hard drives. The attack forced Aramco to disconnect from the internet entirely. American officials immediately pointed to Iran. Perhaps the most chilling development came when investigators discovered that Iranian hackers had gained access to control systems of a small dam in New York State. While this particular facility posed minimal danger, the breach demonstrated that Iran was actively probing American infrastructure, searching for vulnerabilities in power grids, water systems, and other critical targets. The weapon that America built to stop Iran's nuclear program succeeded in destroying 1,000 centrifuges and delaying atomic development by perhaps 2 years. Yet it also taught Iran how to fight in this new domain and inspired them to build their own cyber army. What began with one Dutch engineer carrying infected equipment into an underground bunker has evolved into a permanent state of digital conflict between nations. The age of cyber warfare that Erik Van Sabben helped inaugurate shows no signs of ending, a legacy of that secret weapon America used to strike Iran that continues shaping our world today.